Today we are studying Acts 23. Karen did a video on Acts 22, which is a really important video to watch before you watch this one, because it just explains some of the pre-story. So Paul's been arrested, and in this chapter we see people trying to take the law into their own hands. So Paul gets brought before a council and high priests, where they try and decide what to do with him, but this massive argument breaks out between two religious groups, Jewish religious groups, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They try and sort out what the law is between themselves, and turns out into this massive fight and massive argument. While Paul is in prison, these Jewish people try and plot to kill Paul because they think that he deserves to die. So Paul has to get taken to Felix, who is a Roman governor, and that is the end of chapter 23. Definitely go and read it, because I have skimmed over a lot of that. But in this chapter we do see the importance of the law, especially in the Jewish faith. So Paul is before a high priest, but he doesn't recognise that this is the high priest because they changed every year, and Paul's obviously not been in this area for very long. And Paul calls the high priest a whitewashed wall. And that is because Paul stated that everything that he's been teaching, everything that he's been doing for God, he has a clear conscience about. He hasn't been doing anything wrong. The high priest orders Paul to get punched in the face, which you're not allowed to do to a Roman citizen. You're not allowed to harm them when they're on trial, because Paul's a Roman citizen. And Paul insults the high priest, calls him a whitewashed wall. But this actually goes against the law, and people tell him, you're not allowed to insult the high priest. Paul apologises because he didn't recognise this was the high priest, and he says actually it does say in the law that you should not speak evil of a leader of your people. So Paul recognises that he actually went against the law and apologises. Also we see the Pharisees and the Sadducees, who believe slightly different things, in disagreement about Paul's innocence. They try and sort it out amongst themselves, turns into a big fight. And then the Jewish people try and kill Paul. But Paul, in verse 6, he says that I'm on trial concerning the hope of the resurrection of the dead. So Paul is preaching the hope that we have does not come from the law. It comes from knowing Jesus and knowing that Jesus rose from the dead so that we could have a relationship with God. And that is the only way that we can get into heaven, is having a relationship with God. Obviously we should try and be good, we should try and keep God's law, but we recognise that as humans we fail to do that. Even from the very beginning, when we go back to Genesis and we see Adam and Eve disobey God and eat the fruit from the tree, we struggle to keep God's law. And that's why Jesus came, because Jesus was the perfect human. He kept all of God's law, and that's why he was the perfect sacrifice and took our place on the cross. And Paul is telling all these Jewish leaders, religious leaders who rely on the law and think that is what is going to get them to heaven, that actually the only way to heaven is through Jesus. And maybe we forget that sometimes as well. We're too good trying to be a good person, trying to be what we think a Christian should be like, trying not to lie or steal or kill, hopefully. But we need to recognise that we can't do that on our own, that we need Jesus, because we mess up anyway. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I struggle to keep God's commandments. It says Jesus says that even if you think angry thoughts about someone else, that you have actually killed them, you've committed murder. I know sometimes I struggle with that, and I need God's help to remind me. I need his grace as well. So God sent Jesus to die for us, knowing that we couldn't keep his laws. And one way that we can help keep God's laws is getting to know God, reading our Bibles, because the more we know someone, the more we want to do things that please them. So the more we get to know God, the more we want to keep God's laws, because we know that is what pleases him, and that is a loving thing for us to do. So one way that we can get to know God is always reading our Bibles to read about him, listening when we pray to God, not just talking. Maybe it's good to get a good group of people who you know have a strong Christian faith. So throughout the week, if you are struggling with a particular sin or something, that they can help you with that and hold you accountable for that. So I hope you have learned a lot from this chapter. Go ahead and read it, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye!